What does it mean to open your heart, especially in the face of fear, distrust, concern that somebody isn't ready? And how do we, as spiritually awakening beings, access one of the highest vibrations of love, unconditional love, while also respecting ourselves? Today's journey is especially for subscriber number 17 and others, but this one is for you. It's easier to think about the heart as a portal, a doorway, an energetic gate. And it's often easier to describe things in the contrast experience. Some of you have already done work, and your value is going to be towards the end of the episode when we talk about the multidimensionality of opening the heart and understanding the limits of our reality and the loved ones that have manifested with us before we've shifted to where the expanded version of them might be. But early on in the journey, when perhaps you're still enmeshed in three-dimensional consciousness, what does that mean for those who are new? Just very simply that you're of the world. Your relationships are limited to what you can see, feel, hear, taste, etc. Your experience is dictated by the confines of the human form that you have incarnated in, the life that you've always known, the identity construct that was given to you and conditioned over repeated exposures in your environment, contingent upon space and time. Everything that you've ever known here in that point of awareness is three-dimensional consciousness. It's a descriptor. It's not entirely accurate, but we have to kind of use descriptors and analogies to scaffold our understanding as we talk about some of these concepts. And so when you shift in your awakening process, you expand your awareness, you expand your understanding of the you that exists beyond this life. What happens is you start to enter into this place that some of us call five-dimensional consciousness. And here is where you transcend space and time, meaning your awareness, your expansion, is beyond the life that you've ever known. Many people don't make this jump for a while, even though they're on the spiritual awakening journey. And if that's you, that's okay. You're still welcome here. Listen, learn at your own pace. It will all click when you're ready. Remember, the mind cannot digest what it is not ready for. So repeated listens, you will find nuggets of information that you didn't synthesize previously. When you're early in this awakening journey, steeped in three-dimensional consciousness, your relationships are built by this value system that, collectively speaking, may or may not be in alignment with who you really are inside. Meaning, let's say you live in a culture predominantly influenced by online dating. I happen to, in this physical form, be old enough where I remember dating before that time period. And I've seen this remarkable shift in the ability to know how to walk into a room and understand whether or not somebody is dateable. And when the shift happened, I think we were all excited by it. But the limited exposures that I've had with online dating, and I haven't tried it in a while, so it could be different, but my understanding was that it diluted the entire process, and it created this superficiality where you didn't even have to really know somebody to go out with them. You didn't have to understand the deeper compatibility. It was swipe right or swipe left with very limited information. Are they near me? Check. Are they attractive? Check. As a result, it created a lot of noise. And for others, it created a lot of opportunities because you could just go on endless dates if you didn't care about that deeper compatibility. And you could have endless experiences as long as somebody consented to you. So you had to match, of course. That's irrespective of the bots and how that put a wrench in everything and created a lot of self-inflicting harm and interpretations of whether or not people were interested in you when the site was flooded with bot activity, with people who weren't even people, who were never going to go out with you. But if you didn't know that, you might build a story in your mind, and that might adversely affect your self-image and adversely affect your ability to navigate in a room with actual humans and master the art of understanding whether or not somebody was compatible. It might have shut you down, driven you into isolation. Somebody needs to hear this. All because you didn't understand how the technology worked. Online dating created, in my opinion, a dilution of the process, the selection process of getting to know somebody. And online dating created, in my opinion, the propensity for situationships or friends with benefits situations to dominate. And casual encounters, meaningless, to be more normal. There's nothing wrong with casual encounters, but when we're talking about matters of the heart and opening the heart, it's important to understand where we're starting from. And in my opinion, because culture moved in this direction, it created this avoidance of deeper intimacy. Of course, there are some that actually have avoidant attachment styles, but even those who don't found that it became more normal to ghost. It became more normal to go on a date and then blast them on social media to bolster your content strategy, to get the views, which then created a reciprocal effect in whoever was trying to date you, whoever was watching. It created this anxiety, this insecurity that everything was being judged. When we have our heart closed, we forget that there are people on the other side of the table. We see bodies. We see cachet. We see social media numbers, credibility. We reduce people down to money, what they can provide, or how satisfying they might be for an evening, scratching a particular itch. And it changes the way we interact. It changes the way we assess, the way we receive another individual. It puts on this pair of glasses, this filtering mechanism, where we start to hyperfixate on superficial features. I remember watching a podcast of this notable internet marketer, Tai Lopez, and very interesting person. But as he was talking to the podcasters who were interviewing him, he got into this assessment of partners because he created this personality test, which I took and I found interesting. And that's all I'll say about that. And what I observed is that the first things he asked were about physical criteria. Like, what color hair? Do you like blondes, brunettes? And I was like, interesting. It's a common question. What features of the form? What features of the human body that we overly identify with? And when we drive our choices based on those features, then understandably we can get to places where we realize intimacy is empty. It's no wonder Mr. Lopez himself talks about how challenging it is to really settle down, to have just one partner, almost as though the relationship structure itself is somehow fundamentally flawed. Perhaps because he doesn't know how to really connect. And when you understand how you choose, and you understand what's motivating you, deeply motivating you, what you'll find is that when your heart is closed, you're looking in all the wrong directions, but you don't necessarily know it because you've never had a contrast experience. And when you're in three-dimensional consciousness, relationships like the ones you see on TV are, well, repeating cycles. Hope your cycle is a good one. When you start to expand, what this means is you start to pay attention to other details. You start to pay attention to resonance, how your soul feels in their presence. But if you don't even believe that there's a soul, then obviously you would never feel that. You would never feel the depth of connection confined to the five senses of the body. But do they look good while they're on top of me? That is the most important part. Oh, you keep your eyes closed the whole time. Don't even look at them. Is that connection really? Going out of your way to keep the maximal distance between you and another person in their eyes, perpetually cycling through vacant bodies, vacant memories, stimulating the sense organs that you believe are all that there is, never knowing that there is a portal to an entirely different experience. And yet when that experience begins to manifest and show itself on your doorstep, you also go out of your way to talk to everybody else except that person that is stirring the deeper parts of you. Where we nurture our attention, our affection, our connection, it grows. And when people are actually afraid of genuine connection, what they do is they bind themselves in these circles and loops and patterns where they talk to everybody else and nurture all of the other connections that actually deeply unsatisfy them, or perhaps bring other negative feelings, guilt, self-abandonment, rejection, chasing unavailable partners. I've been there. When you really start to open the heart, what you do is you prioritize connection. Connection, not rejection. You start to say yes to those that stir you deeply, regardless of the life path that they're in, the physical form that they house, within reason, of course. But generally speaking, the resonance and vibration that you share with somebody that you're actually attracted to is also going to include the physical component. But it may not be blonde or brunette per se, like you have in your mind. This is my type. It may be somebody who's not your type, but it's not going to be somebody so wildly unattractive that you're overcome with this magnetism that stirs you, that also repels you and disgusts you. You see what I mean? And when you open the heart, what you're doing is you're opening up to this deeper level of sensation. And for some, that's quite frightening. Because for many of you, before you've encountered this feeling, you don't know how deep it goes. You don't know how you will behave, how the other person will behave. And that in itself gets into this unknown territory that is frightening, because it's easier to keep surface level connections because you can walk away anytime. But when you really start opening the portal of the heart, what you find is that you can't easily walk away. And this is the beauty, the profound beauty of soul contracts, which I talk a lot about on my channels. If you're just tuning in, it's Next Level by Dr. C. Doctor is all spelled out. C as in cat. Next Level by Dr. C. I'm on most of the major platforms. And I teach about how to overcome some of these patterns, to sustain and hold this higher level connection of the heart, among more facets, of course. So when you say yes to the soul, what you're doing is you're saying yes even when it doesn't make sense. Even when culture tells you that your pick is wrong, that you should do something else. You say yes because there's a resonance there, a vibration, a stirring that maybe you can't fully explain or articulate. This is what keeps you, even when people are not ready. This is what some perceive keeps them stuck on partners that they can't explain, that their family and friends are saying, walk away. What's wrong with you? It's quite simple. Because in three-dimensional consciousness, it is quite simple. Because the factors driving your behavior are much more surface. So people become interchangeable. Walk away becomes something, it's challenging. Sometimes you still need attorneys, and there's paperwork, and there's a process, right? So it's not literally like always simple. But when you're not deeply connected, it's a lot more simple than when you are. And when you're deeply connected to somebody who's not ready, or maybe you're not ready, what this means is that perhaps their attachment style is preventing them from fully opening up to you. Perhaps their attachment style is ruling their behavior in self-sabotaging ways where they go out of their way to destroy the connection, whether they mean to or not. They're still caught in their own loops of fear, destruction, rage, jealousy, insecurity. You see how these lower vibrational patterns can disrupt the natural blossoming of a connection when somebody is hyperfixated on whether or not they're being cheated on, for example. They can't see the fidelity of the person standing in front of them because they're living out a story in their mind that may or may not be true, projecting that into the relationship space that creates harm, mistrust, a breeding ground for disasters, breakups, heartbreak, pain. Because any self-respecting person will eventually recognize that whoever's holding that story, they need to work on that themselves, because there's no amount of reassurance that reassures them. Just like if they have anxious, preoccupied attachment style, there literally is no amount of telling somebody how much you're committed and that you love them and that you're not going anywhere, and they can't see it. They can't process it. They can't really take it in. And a genuinely healthy, securely attached person recognizes the limits of another person's wounded psychology and their ability to open up and receive what is being given to them. And a truly secure and healthy person will give their partner time, will let them make mistakes, will coach them through it. But if it really is a situation where they cannot take it in, they will leave. And how do they access that leaving and unconditional love? If they are multidimensional, if they've opened up to that level of consciousness, they will see the person that they love as a multidimensional being who needs help, facilitation, healing, coaching, retreats, but ultimately that journey is theirs, that healing work is theirs. And they hold the hope that healing will be complete in another timeline. They release attachment to that individual, and they create the space to shift into a world where that person has healed. How do they do that? I talk about it more in my AC by Dr. C private playlist. You can check the link in the bio, but it essentially goes like this. You surrender to the fact that the person you love has a journey, and that you met them at a very important part of that journey. But some journeys are meant to go alone. Some journeys are meant to work with other people who are perhaps better well matched in attachment styles. They can get down into the dirt with them, the ditches with them that you find you cannot do. You just cannot, because that's self-love and self-respect. And when you've hit that boundary, you just know. And it doesn't say anything about your love and acceptance for them, but it's just this honoring that you can't go there with them. You can't fight like that. You can't play out certain manifested worlds and realities because you see the writing on the wall. And it's like entering into a haunted house in some of those relationships. And you're like, I can do it for maybe a Halloween night, but I can't do that for the next 20 years. And when people get in these loops and cycles and they're not awake to how to do the shadow work journey, it can literally be 20 years that you're signing up for. And you recognize, I understand that they want to live in a haunted house for 20 years with a clown coming out of the walls at, any given time for a jump scare. They have like fearful avoidant attachment style, like heavy dysregulation, lots of chaos, unpredictability, walking on eggshells, sometimes abusive dynamics depending on how shadowy it gets. You're like, yeah, I can't do, I do love you. Yes, I actually really do, but I really can't live like this for 20 years with you. I think you need to work with somebody else. It's that feeling. Recognizing that somebody's healing journey is theirs and theirs alone. And you can encourage from the sidelines. You can encourage from a different timeline. But until they're actually ready to emerge from that haunted house, you can't go in there and drag them out. They're just going to go right back in, dragging you with them, depending on how healed you are. And so it's a recognition of limitations, not of love, but of capacity. It's a recognition that when somebody is hell-bent on creating hell, you cannot invite them to heaven. I mean, you could. Perhaps that's what you're offering in a relationship, right? But they're not going to stay there. Worse yet, when we're really not ready, even when we walk through the gates of heaven, we end up manifesting hell in heaven. We could take the most beautiful relationship opportunity, the divine counterpart connection, the twin flame, the soulmate, and we build a life and a manifested world with them, that we still bring our karmic junk with us. And we fill heaven with those patterns and those wounds, with the I told you so's and the triggers and the reactions. Not that you should not have any at all. That's not the goal. Perfection is not the goal. The goal is making sure that you're selecting the connection that is right for you at any given moment in time. And when we get stuck on people, it's often an invitation to do this deeper level examination of what is right for us. Sometimes it is right to stay and to work with them. It's more efficient that way, to speak at it from a strategic perspective. We don't have to get rid of the mind, even in matters of the heart. If you feel the resonance, if you feel the connection, and you're in a loop yourself, right? It's easier to focus on other people before we bring the examination to ourselves, but very often we're there too. We just don't recognize it yet. And so when we understand how we're magnetized, we understand how we're being invited to grow, sometimes the correct answer is actually to stay. But I couldn't possibly tell you whether or not that's right for you. When you stay because you understand that you're working through your own patterns and triggers and wounds. And that person with theirs is stimulating you, is activating you, catalyzing your own growth and evolution through a mirror or through experiences that you find unpalatable. Particularly those of you who are supposed to say no, who are supposed to love yourself. You are going to be matched with people that make your life, in your eyes, a living hell. And it doesn't stop. And it gets worse and worse and worse until what? you finally say no. Especially those that are coming from any sort of codependent patterns, where you believe that stepping into unconditional love means allowing anybody into your bedroom no matter how they're treating you, anybody into your bank account no matter how they're treating you, anybody into your life, affecting your children, your family, your sphere of influence, wherever that might be, your community, regardless of whether or not they're ready or can receive with reverence and respect the opportunity that you are providing. Because we somehow believe that to be Christ-like, to be Buddha-like, to be Gandhi-like, to be an ascended master in human form on the spiritual awakening journey means to have unconditional compassion and forgiveness and love. And to do so means that we have no boundaries and that we allow and allow and allow with no consequences, no repercussions, no nothing. Because we just turn the other cheek and just show them how much we love them anyway. I would submit to you that this is codependency, dressed up as Christ consciousness. When you recognize your own limits in your human form, you integrate what it means to live a material life. When you recognize that there are actual real-world consequences to you and the people that you love, and innocent bystanders, like children, and that you are having to weigh the impact of somebody's unhealed trauma and the effect that it's going to have not only on you, but those innocent people. You start to understand why boundaries are so important, why self-love and self-respect are so important. So how do you reach unconditional love while also setting boundaries? You say yes to the healed version of that person. And you wait for the timeline shift and for reality to concur. You say yes to the timeline where they have done the work. And you say no to the timeline where it appears, by all estimation, with eyes of discernment, not judgment, discernment, it appears that the way they are creating and manifesting in their own world is healed or healing if they are demonstrating a concerted effort and self-correction. You can tell the difference. And you shift or wait for the shift. And you wait for reality to concur. And when it doesn't, you back away, you put up the boundaries, you apply the consequences, and you wait. And you wait. And you move on if you need to. You work with other people. You release attachment to a particular outcome, that they have to be a spouse, that they have to go to this school. Let's say it's a child that you're doing this with. You release that metric of success that your mind tells you. And you slip into the connection, the resonance, and you find the soulful version of them and you connect with that one. And you let them choose to build their life any way they want to, but you maintain the connection with that soul. No matter what timeline they're on, no matter what timeline you're on, the connection is in your heart. The forgiveness is there because you understand that if they're still working through wounds, if they're still going through cycles, that that's their journey. And they're there for a reason. It says nothing about you or your love for them or their desire for healing. They are learning and integrating on a path that their soul needs them to. And when you feel the connection, you feel the vibration in the quantum field, that's what you center on. And you let the world exist around you, them and their own creation, you and yours. That is unconditional love from a multidimensional perspective.